Okay, here we got a 2000 Mercury Grand Marque with a 4.6 liter engine. This one comes in with the check engine light on and multiple issues going on with the car. Let me just show you some of the problems that we have, and I'll show you how we're going to check it. As you can see, we have a catalytic converter efficiency. We have a lean exhaust on sensor 1 and sensor 2. And we have multiple cylinder misfires. Cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4. So a common problem we have with these cars is that the intake manifolds start to leak. And in this particular case, it looks like with the lean indication on the O2 sensors here that most likely the intake manifold gasket is leaking. So let's take a look under the hood and we'll get started. I apologize for the noise that you're getting, but with the engine running, it's a little bit difficult to do anything. I just want to show you a problem that we have with this car here, other than the intake manifold leaking. We actually have a problem with, as you can see right up in here, number 2. As the car is running, you'll see number 2 cylinder all of a sudden starts to misfire. See, it's starting to misfire. That's the contribution to misfire in number 2 cylinder. So most likely we have a problem with the coils in this car too, or the manifold gasket itself is just leaking so bad that is causing a misfire. So what we're going to do, just to confirm where the issue is right now, is we're going to rotate the coil from number 2 cylinder over to number 3 cylinder, and we'll see if that misfire travels to a different cylinder. If it does, then we're going to wind up changing the coil at the same time. As you can see, number 2 cylinder continually misfires. So let me show you another problem we have right here. As you can see now, the problem now traveled to the number 3 cylinder. I rotated the coil, and now the problem is the number 3 cylinder. So now we know that coil is no good. So we're going to replace the coil, and that should take care of that misfire in that cylinder. All right, let's give that a try, and then we'll go from there. Don't know if you can see this, but all the way in the back, right back inside here, is actually a leak inside here. It's leaking antifreeze from the manifold itself. So let me take that coil out, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so like I said, we're going to disconnect the battery first. We're going to disconnect the negative cable, remove it from the car. Once we have that removed, we're just going to relocate it to the side and out of the way. We're going to take off the air intake, which is right here. We're going to drain the cooling system, and let me get to that step, and then I'll be right back. Okay, now that we have the antifreeze draining and we took off the hose, the air intake here, we're going to remove the fan belt. And the way you do that is you take a ratchet and you put it down inside the pulley itself with the tensioner, and you just push it down like that, and then you take the belt right off like that, and we're just going to relocate that to a different area. Now we're going to remove the alternator, and the way we do that is we're going to take out the bolts in the bottom here, and here, 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 and here, and then we're going to relocate the alternator. I'm also going to disconnect the upper radiator hose. As soon as the system drains out, we're going to relocate that to the side, and I'm going to disconnect the linkage here. The way you disconnect the linkage is don't force it. You got to put slight upward pressure, and it slides right out. And you can see I got that little hook on there, so you just slide it right out. Alright, so let me just get the alternator out, and then we'll come right back. Okay, now that we have the alternator out and we have the cables off of the accelerator, we're going to disconnect all of these vacuum hoses here. You'll see it goes into the top of the cover. We just pull these off out of the way and relocate them to the side. We're going to unplug all of the electrical connectors that are on the manifold itself, and we'll pull them out of the way. We're going to disconnect each one of the injectors, and the way you do that is you just push the clip in on the side, and they all unplug one at a time. So we're going to do that. We're going to take out all of the coils, and we're going to relocate them to the side, and let me get that done, and then we'll come right back. We're going to disconnect this hose here, of course, too. This is for the vacuum. So let me get started on that, and I'll come right back. Okay, now that we have everything disconnected for the injectors and the coils are out of the car, we're going to disconnect the fuel lines right here. And the way you do that is you take these little clips here that hold they're like a safety. You pull these off, and that's just... You just pull them off like this and relocate them to the side, and then they make a special tool to take off the O-ring here. It goes on to the rail like this, and then you pull it off. So you push these in and you pull the line out. So we're gonna get these out of here. We're gonna take these off. Once I get these off, we're gonna take off the thermostat housing. So we're gonna take these bolts out, and then we'll come right back. So we have the fuel lines disconnected, and we just put them on the side. We're just going to disconnect this bracket back here. We're going to take this bracket off the car so we can gain access to the EGR tube that runs up right underneath here. So we're going to take this bracket off, a couple of screws, 10 millimeters here, and there's probably one more back over here. And then we're going to unscrew this screw right here for the EGR valve, and we'll come right back. Okay, after we get that off, we need to take off this bracket right over here. As you can see, I took this bolt up already, but the brackets still don't come off. We need to get down in the back over here and remove the bolts in the back over there. So let me just show you where they're located and how I'm going to do it. They're all the way down in the back. Now it's hard to see, but down in the back right there. So I'm just going to take those two bolts out down here, and then I'll come right back. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we have that bracket disconnected, but as you can see, it won't come out until we take the air intake off with the throttle plate. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to disconnect all of the bolts down the bottom here that hold the throttle plate on, and we're going to lift this up and out of the way. So let me do that, and we'll come right back. Okay, once we've taken off the throttle plate assembly, we relocate that, take that away from the vehicle. That bracket, as you can see, pulls right off then. And now what we're going to do is we're going to unbolt the manifold. There's about 10 millimeter bolts all the way down the manifold on both sides. We're going to disconnect those, and we're going to take the manifold off the car. So let me get these bolts out, and I'll show you how that goes. On this particular car, we are going to change the manifold itself. We're going to replace it with a new one, so we do have to remove the fuel rail and the injectors and replace that onto the other one, but we'll do that in just a moment. Okay, so the way you disconnect the fuel rail is you take out the 4 bolts up on top of the fuel rail, and then we're going to pry the rail away from the manifold. And the way I do it is it's all very loose right now, but we want to get the injectors out of here. So I just put a little bit of slight pressure on each one of the injectors, and just to get it to pull up a little bit out of their location. And then we'll go around the other side, do the same thing, and then we'll take that rail assembly out, take the rest of the bolts out of the manifold, and I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out. Okay, now that we have all the bolts out of the manifold, all the ones on this side and that side, the manifold should just come right up and off the car. So let's do that right now. That's it. Manifold's off. And I'll show you what I meant about the gaskets. These gaskets here are the ones that go bad, and they start sucking in air into the system, and it winds up with a vacuum leak or a misfire. Let's clean it all up, and we'll start putting it back together, and we'll see where it goes. As you can see, looking at the manifolds here, this manifold is a redesign. This is the old one that came off, and this is the new replacement that's going back on. From experience, I've run into this before, is that these holes don't line up where the alternator bracket connects onto. So we're going to put the whole thing back together, and then I'll show you how we're going to resolve that problem with the alternator bracket. You just have to you have to drill holes and relocate. Okay, we've got the everything cleaned up in here now and ready to put the manifold in. So we just lay the manifold in place. We're not going to tighten anything up yet. We're just going to catch everything. Put all the bolts in first, and we'll catch the bolts in there, and then we'll go around and tighten it up. So let me put the bolts back in place, and then we'll catch everything, and I'll show you what we're up to. Okay, once you have all the bolts in, they're all in finger tight, they're not tightened up, then you would go around and tighten everything up. The thermostat bolt are in, they're not tight either, and we're just going to follow this sequence that comes with the new manifold and tighten it up as directed. So let's tighten it up, and then we'll come right back. Okay, now that we have the manifold bolted down, we're going to put the fuel rail back in there. And it's very simple how you do it. Just going to reverse the procedure how you took it out. I'm going to try to do this with one hand, so we'll see how it goes. Basically, just going to go underneath the EGR tube, and then we're just going to put the injectors right back into their openings here, and then we're going to bolt it down right up in here. So let me just push these back down, get the bolts caught in there, and then I'll be right back. Okay, now that you have all the manifold bolts in and tight, and you've reinstalled your bracket on the side of the driver's side of the vehicle, even though it may seem like it's a good idea to leave that bracket off, don't leave it off. It serves a purpose down in the back of the engine. It holds a wiring harness away from the engine so it doesn't actually get damaged by rubbing through. So make sure you put that bracket back on. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reconnect all of the injectors. We're going to plug them back on, and we're going to put the coils back in position, and we're going to reattach our fuel lines. And the way the fuel lines go on is very simple. I'll show you real quick. You just take the line, put it into the fitting, push it until you hear it snap, and you're locked in. Reattach your latch on here. That's a safety. Same thing here. Push it in, and you hear it snap. Reattach your safety on here, and that's it. So let me get the injector reconnected, put the coils back in, and I'll get back. Okay, now that we have all the coils in place, the little 8mm bolts are tightened down, the holes of coils in place. We reattached all the harnesses on each one of the coils. Now we're ready to lay back in the throttle body. So we're just going to lay the throttle body in there, and I'll show you how it goes. And make sure you replace this gasket with a new one underneath the throttle body. What we're going to do is just lay it back in there a little loose for now. We're not going to tighten anything up. And what we're going to do is we're going to catch the down here, the EGR tube. We're going to catch that one in there first, so it's caught a couple of threads, and then we'll reattach the bolts on the bottom of the throttle body to the manifold. And let me do that, and we'll come right back. We're going to reconnect all of our plugs that are unplugged, and I'll show you how that goes. Okay, now that we have all of the bolts to hold the throttle body down to the manifold tight, now we can come around and we can tighten up the EGR tube right here. We're going to reattach our vacuum hoses and plug in all of our electrical connectors that we've previously unplugged. Put these back in here. Then we're going to put that bracket back on over here and lay our cables in. So I'll show you how that goes. Okay, we've reconnected our vacuum hoses, reconnected the vacuum hose over here. Now we're ready to lay in the accelerator cable. So we'll put those cables back in, we'll reattach them on here where they came from, and I'll show you how that goes. Okay, now that we have the accelerator cable reconnected to the throttle body, we're going to reconnect our radiator hose up onto the top here. We'll slide that clamp back down, and then we're going to put the snorkel back on from the airflow meter to the throttle body, and then I'm going to lay the alternator back in, and I'll show you what I meant about that being off on the top here and how to correct for it. Alright, show you how it goes. Okay, remember what I told you about the alternator, right? You put the alternator back in, you bolt it down tight over here, and then when you put your bracket back on, up on the top of the alternator here, see where it's mounted right at the top here? See how it does not line up? It does not line up with the bolts below it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to mark right up on top here and right up on top here, and we're going to drill a hole in the top of this bracket to make it fit. So let me drill those holes in there, and I'll show you how it goes back together. All right. Okay, now that I drilled out the bolts on the bracket there, you can see that they line up just as it's supposed to be. These are in the same position, so we can put the cover back over the top. So we're going to tighten these up, reconnect the regulator, and put the fan belt back on. And we should be pretty much set once we get some antifreeze in it. So let me tighten these bolts up, get the belt back on, and I'll be right back. Okay, bolts are tight, plug is plugged back in, fan belt is back on. I'm going to reconnect the battery, get some antifreeze in it, and then we're going to start it up and make sure everything is okay. Okay, now that we got everything together, we got the battery connected, we have the belt on, we have all the electrical connectors on, the brackets reattached, the snorkel is back on for the air intake, and everything is reconnected. Let's start it up, and we should be in good shape. That's it. And as you can see, it runs fairly well. Let's check the computer and see what shows up. Okay, and as you can see, everything seems to be working just the way it's supposed to be. We're going to let the vehicle warm up a little bit now, and once it warms up, we're going to take it out, take it for a road test, and make sure everything is functioning the way it's supposed to be. The best thing is you can see pretty much on the screen here that there is no more misfires. Everything looks like it's working perfectly. So, all right, let's button this up. We're going to take it for a ride, and we'll make sure it's okay. That's it. No misfires, all the cylinders are firing exactly as they're supposed to be. That's it. Follow these steps, be careful with all your electrical connectors, make sure everything is reconnected as is needed, and you shouldn't have much of a problem with it. Just take your time and be careful, and remember about that bracket for the alternator. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.